Hello everyone, RFG here with the review for the free spin-off of Haunted Day DLC for SANABI, currently available on Steam and planned for a later release on the Switch, developed by Wonder Potion and published by NEOWIZ. This DLC was only announced a short while ago, so it was nice to see one of my favorite games from 2023 get a new content update nearly right after its 2-year anniversary initial release date. If you aren't familiar with SANABI, it's a side-scrolling action platformer about a legendary retired military veteran sent to investigate the mysteriously abandoned megacity, Mago. There is a lot more to the story, but it was the overall quality of the entire package that made it notable to me, including its satisfying gameplay. It's built mainly on using the main character's chainhook prosthetic arm for grapple mechanics, and excellently combined its platforming and action together, setting it apart from most other action platformers that keep the two aspects generally separate. There was more that did make SANABI stand out. The game has some large, beautiful pixel art stage designs that span multiple rooms with some really smooth character animations to match, and despite being centered mainly on its initial grapple mechanic, the game did gradually introduce new abilities for you to use, along with applying them well into its later segments. It also did have a heavy story focus, along with a strong cinematic feel, even though it presented most of its narrative strictly in its 2D side-scrolling perspective. Its story-to-gameplay ratio is more skewed on the story side, so the pacing might not be to everyone's preference at times, but its story was often interesting and compelling. A Haunted Day tends to balance slightly more towards the gameplay compared to story, in a bit of a contrast from the main campaign, but it still keeps the side-scrolling cinematic feel from the original and does have its own increasingly intriguing story, this time following Major Isun Song as she begins her latest operation of investigating unauthorized AI use. I won't go too much into the story as the DLC recommends you to complete the initial campaign before beginning a Haunted Day, but there's nothing forcing you to do so. You can download the DLC from the Steam store page and select it in the Start Game menu. There are a number of other differences besides the story to gameplay ratio from the original game to the DLC. The main ones being that there is no grapple mechanic and there is more of an emphasis on action combat, but there is still a heavy focus on keeping the platforming linked directly to the action like the original campaign. There are a couple of core platforming abilities that are shared between the two, like being able to jump, and clinging, climbing, and sliding down walls, but Major Song isn't able to cling and move across ceilings like her main campaign counterpart. Another difference is that she has a double jump compared to the single jump from the main character in the original campaign. This adds a little extra height and length to cover larger gaps and extend her reach, but is linked to some other of her core mechanics that I'll get into soon. Most enemies aren't defeated in one hit like the main game either, so Major Song has two types of attacks to deal damage. One is her melee attack that when on the ground functions like an infinite attack string as long as you hold the attack button down or keep pressing it. Her aerial melee attack is slightly more limited as it has a certain amount of recovery before it can be used again, but it has an additional purpose besides dealing damage that I'll get into in a bit. Song's other attack is a shotgun blast that can damage multiple enemies from a distance while dealing more damage from up close. Holding the shotgun button down allows you to aim in 360 degrees around her, and the recoil of the shot will launch her in the opposite direction of where you aimed. Using it in the air makes it useful for gaining extra vertical or horizontal length when needed, but you can only attack with the shotgun once while in the air, and will usually need to land before you can use it again. However, hitting a target with her aerial melee attack will allow you to be able to use your shotgun again while in the air. It'll also reset her double jump each time too, making it a core part of how a lot of the platforming works in a Haunted Day. Much of the platforming will need you to determine when to use your double jump and shotgun to reach higher areas or cover larger gaps, while your aerial melee attack will be needed to help keep you in the air and gain horizontal and vertical distance. But since you'll often be attacked by enemies, deciding how to attack them while you're juggling which abilities you have access to or when to use your aerial melee attack to reset your air options becomes a part of the challenge. It's also a core part of the progression in most areas of the game. A Haunted Day, much like the main campaign, is very linear and based around moving from one room to the next. Sometimes this will be based solely on platforming, but will likely need you to defeat all enemies as you maneuver around the stage before you can progress. Platforming does remain a strong part of this DLC, but since it is more action-based, your melee attack doesn't only have a secondary function used for platform mechanics. There's a secondary effect meant for combat, where each hit from both your ground and air melee attack charges a meter that when full, lets you unleash a more powerful blast from your shotgun. You get one of these charge shots for about every 10 successful hits against an enemy, and using your shotgun when it's fully charged uses that powered up shot regardless of where it's aimed, but using your shotgun before its charge is full keeps it at the same level, though it can eventually start to lose its charge. Finding the right time to take advantage of your charged shotgun blast can have a large impact on surviving in the more challenging combat rooms in a Haunted Day, but there's also a way to increase the rate of getting full shotgun charges. You can do this with Major Song's burst ability, which creates a very shortly timed radius around Song that can destroy most enemy projectiles and can instantly charge your shotgun to full when destroying projectiles with perfect timing. Burst also has another effect. Using it to destroy 3 different projectile targets with perfect timing at once activates Overpower mode. This mode stays active only for a few seconds, but in that time gives enhanced damage to Major Song's melee attacks and a fairly substantial speed boost. There's no other way to activate Overpower mode, so it's best to get as much use out of it whenever possible. It's important to know that burst doesn't make you invincible, and trying to time it for instant shotgun charges or to activate Overpower mode can put you into risky situations, and missed timings can lead you to take damage. Major Song's health is located next to her character sprite. You can heal by holding down the HP recovery button while on the ground. This can only be done once per checkpoint, but both your health and ability to heal will be restored at a new one. If you lose all of your health before or after healing, you'll be sent back to the last checkpoint. Most checkpoints aren't set too far from each other, and because of the game's linear design, anytime you make it to a checkpoint, the game will trigger an autosave, so you should never really be at risk to lose too much progress. I completed my first playthrough of the DLC on the Dark Horse or Hard difficulty and did find it to be fairly challenging, but there are 2 other difficulties that can be selected for those that might be more interested in just getting through the story or not as used to action platformers. If you're looking for a more demanding playthrough, after beating the DLC once, you can unlock the government-certified living weapon or hardest difficulty and the speedrun mode with 2 separate options for those who might be interested in some additional replay value. If the spin-off DLC label of A Haunted Day makes you a bit wary of what it has to offer, don't be. It's entirely fitting, because it's not made so different from what makes up the main components of SANABI's original campaign, as it captures much of the same spirit of it in both gameplay and presentation. Its blended combat action and platforming design manages to stay true to SANABI's core gameplay strengths, even if it prioritizes them in slightly opposite ways and properly adjusts how the mechanics work to suit the alternate styles, with the first boss battle probably being a good showcase of what's new and familiar. It's able to show off the added combat focus, as bosses now have a health bar and your attacks vary in damage, that still keeps platforming as part of the core mechanics, since the arena is still revolved around avoiding obstacles and enemy attacks by using a similar previous boss design, yet adapting it around Major Song's abilities rather than the previous main characters. Unfortunately, the number of boss battles in A Haunted Day are very limited, and a single playthrough can be pretty short, yet it's hard not to be impressed by what this DLC does offer. If you appreciated the meticulous graphical detail in the base game stage's looks and their overall layouts that were interconnected with large rooms, that continues with this DLC, and that's combined with what are mostly new level and enemy designs. You won't see quite as much variety, but what's there is worth seeing. Music still hits pretty hard with the number of tracks that keep up with the game's fast and often intense pace. Most importantly, the differing mechanics do keep the feel of the original gameplay, and the additional story, despite the spin-off label, finds a way to connect to the base game, which is worth noting considering SANABI's narrative already felt pretty complete. Those who value the cinematic side-scrolling presentation of the main story will be able to see that here too. A Haunted Day is a wonderful surprise for fans of SANABI, and anyone who is looking for something to add to the base game's experience should give it a play as soon as they can. If you're someone who hasn't played through the original campaign, now's a good chance to give it and the new free DLC a try. While an initial playthrough of A Haunted Day is a bit on the short side, its overall design is impressive, making it promising to see what the developers at Wonder Potion will be working on next. And that's it for me. Let me know what you think below. Thanks. Bye.